Today we're going to talk about meditation. I was talking with one of my clients about meditation, and I find this question actually comes up a lot in Hollywood. Maybe it's just because it's Hollywood. People want to know about meditation, and I give them a long explanation about why I don't meditate, and so I'm going to give you a long explanation about why I do not do classical seated meditation. I do the better stuff. Classic seated meditation, right? We've all seen it in movies. You sit still. It can be whatever happens. You clear your mind and you do it for X amount of time. The point is to yoke your thoughts, yoke in the classic sense of like a yoke that goes on like an oxen's neck, to yoke your mind so that you can control it for a certain amount of time every day. The reason I tell people that this is not the best thing for us to do in the modern world anymore is because of the historical context of how seated meditation developed and the way the world is now. When seated meditation started, and you think about India and you think about China and you think about all these schools of thought in the Asian countries where they focus on seated meditation, it was a different world. There were no machines back then, right? The modern industrial revolution is not an old thing. It's, recent in the time scale of humanity. So for the majority of human history, we got up every day, we walked, we carried things, we carried water. Everybody in the world, 99% of all of human history was people carrying their own water from a lake and raising their own food and tending their own animals. And luxury was being able to ride a horse instead of walk the 10 miles that you had to walk or whatever. You had to move all day in order to stay alive. Even rich people, medieval Europe, they still had to walk to the top of their castle. I've walked to the top of castles. I've been in those castles. Those are still really steep, nasty staircases. They're that way to keep people from running up and killing you in the middle of the night. They had a purpose. But you had to walk up and down those stairs X number of times every day. You still, even if you were rich, still had to move quite a bit. You still had to ride a horse from place to place. So when meditation was developed, they developed do the opposite. Sit down, don't move, quiet your mind, focus on your breathing. There's a million forms of meditation. That's just a general once-over of what meditation is. If you look at the history of Kung Fu, because the history of Kung Fu is great, there was a temple in China on one side of the mountain range, and all the monks were there, and they were all trying to meditate all day. And this guy walked across the mountains, a warrior walked across the mountains from India and walked into this temple and was like, oh, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, we're meditating. This is obviously paraphrased. It's like drunk history only for Kung Fu. And he was like, wow, you guys aren't really doing this all that well. You're not able to focus. And they were like, yeah, why can't we focus? Why can't we get it down? And he's like, because you're weak. And so you know what he did? He taught him a series of physical exercises to strengthen the body, to help strengthen the mind, so that they could become more still when they were meditating, right? So he taught them to move, and that became Shaolin Kung Fu as we know it today, or that's kind of like a rough history. So at the Shaolin Temple, they train, they do all these crazy physical exercises. Think of like CrossFit from 800 years ago. That's what they're still doing there today. They have seated meditation the rest of the time, but they go back and forth between two extremes of extreme movement and extreme stillness. In the modern world, we don't have much movement at all, let alone extreme movement. I tell people not to do seated meditation. I tell people to do moving meditation. Moving meditation would be like doing Kung Fu forms. The versions that I practice of moving meditation are kettlebell swinging for time or kettlebell snatches for time, heavy club mills or reverse mills for time. The whole point of meditation is to clear your mind and focus your breath. If you've ever tried to do a 10-minute set of kettlebell snatches with any weight at all, it doesn't even have to be a competition weight, you instantly know that your mind is going to scream at you and try and get you to do something else. And the only way to get through it is to focus on your breath and make everything a perfect rhythmic action. In the modern world where we sit in cars all day, we sit in movie theaters, we sit in an office, we sit in a desk, even the most active members of Western society who are maybe construction workers, I would say, right? There aren't a lot of people who are required to move a lot every day. So if you're going to meditate, you should take that meditation and make it into something that meets as many requirements of what we should be doing as possible. So we need to be loading our skeleton asymmetrically so that we get that cross-body stabilization, which is the thing that's gonna help us make us strong and keep us from having a lot of physical pain. and it needs to be rhythmic. I'm just gonna do a quick demonstration with a club bell, and what you're gonna notice is that if you know anything about yoga, it sounds exactly like Kundalini breath of fire, because it is exactly like Kundalini breath of fire. Instead of the seated meditation, this is what we do instead. So now just scale that up, right? Anything from 5 minutes. One of the ways I like to do it is to have a deck of playing cards, flip a card, do that many minutes of that a day. If that thing is heavy enough, you're not thinking about anything else. If you can think about something, that's not heavy enough yet. Get a heavier club. So I've done sets of that go up to 40 minutes with a light club. Frankly, it's just way too much time. Just get a heavier club and don't go above maybe 20 minutes of that. You're getting all those other benefits that you should be getting as well. That is cardio, that is every muscle in your body is being engaged. You're learning to rotate. On some days we do inside, on some days we do outside, on some days we do kettlebell snatches, on some days we do long cycle kettlebell movements, but it's basically movement for time with load. That is what modern meditation should be. This has been Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica with a weird historical overview of why I don't think you should be doing seated meditation in the modern world.